everyone, 4.5 years ago, the Landing opened its doors here on Bissonnet, and it's incredible all the things that God has done since then. And today I'm joined by two of our co-founders, Natasha Paradeshi and Deborah Gates. So would you mind just introducing yourselves?
Hi, my name is Natasha Paradeshi, and I currently serve as the board chair for the Landing. I have been married to my husband, Sonny, for 6.5 years and have a 2.5-year-old, Zachariah, who loves to paint and swim. And I work with my husband on our company, Solace Media.
Hi, my name is Deborah Gates. I'm a wife and mother and possibly the happiest grandmother in the world. I'm currently the board secretary for the Landing, and I'm so thrilled to serve on the board. My professional history is in the court reporting field, and that's all about me.
That's awesome. So, you all dreamed up the Landing and really saw it out from the very beginning. So what sparked your interest in human trafficking?
For me, about 14 years ago, I attended Urbana, a missions conference where I heard somebody from International Justice Missions speaking about human trafficking. And at that moment, God ignited just this passion in me. And I knew that I was going to be called to this field for the rest of my life in different capacities. And so over the years, I volunteered and worked with multiple organizations. And just as my understanding of this field, it's such a complex field, but my understanding has grown, but my desire to see freedom for these survivors has really grown even more.
That's awesome. What about you, Deborah?
I actually followed my husband into the anti-trafficking field. It was his passion that I was following initially.
Mm-hmm.
And he was active volunteering in outreach.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted a partner to assist him with transporting survivors to safe homes. So I was that partner, and I was just honestly surprised at how quickly his passion became my passion.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So then with that passion, how did the Landing get started?
We were working together. Natasha, James, and I were working together at another organization, and we just had the desire to connect with the survivors on a deeper level.
Mm.
So Natasha pitched the idea of a drop-in center, and James and I said, "What is a drop-in center?"
Yeah.
And quickly got up to speed, and it was just basically a process of following God's nudging and listening for his footsteps and trying to be obedient.
Yeah.
And creating something where there was nothing to help survivors pursue freedom for themselves.
Oh, that's amazing. And here we are, less than 5 years later, and we've served over 600 survivors. So just incredible to see what God has done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and one of the reasons that we decided we wanted to open was because less than 2% of victims have actually been identified, and they don't get access to resources. And so we wanted to stand in that gap. We wanted to build a safe, accessible space where they can easily come to, right off of the street of Bissonnet and from all over Houston, really, to come and receive services. And really, in this time, we've been able to identify over 75% of the victims of the survivors that we serve as victims of trafficking, and get them access to resources and build relationships with them. So it's been amazing.
So in the early days, what did you envision for the Landing? What did you hope this would become?
Well, in the early days, we just hoped it would become a safe haven for them, like a really a respite for somebody who's in the sex industry to be able to come to and know what's available to them, whether they might be ready or not ready to get out of the life. We wanted a journey with them. We wanted to walk alongside them as they're discovering what freedom looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll admit that our dreams for the landing were smaller than God's plans. We had no idea that we would have an opportunity to serve this many survivors.
Yeah.
We just couldn't comprehend at the time how large the need was. But God knew, and God provided, and we're just so honored to have a small role in helping survivors heal.
So, Natasha, you were our first executive director. You served in that role for the first 4 years. What did the early days of operations look like when we first opened our doors?
Oh man, early days look like me and Sunny sitting in the drop-in center wondering when the first person was going to show up at the landing.
Like, hooray!
Yes,
You're here. They came.
Pretty much. So we had an open house where over 100 people from different organizations in the community came, and so we figured we'd probably first get survivors coming from referrals, and that is what happened because that was before we started our outreach, and it was those early days it was hard because I was trying to figure out accounting and finance and operations and being a case manager. But what we really what was in our heart was to provide quality services, and just one or two people couldn't do that. When we saw just one person in a week, that was a celebration. Then it was one person in a day was a celebration. Then now it's so many more a day that we're serving, and so it's exciting to see what's come over time. But yeah, those early days, it was definitely a challenge, and we really wanted to make sure that we pull in different people with different skill sets to make sure that we could provide the quality services over time. But in that first year, I remember two specific stories where I was like, this is totally worth it. One of the survivors went through a class called Ending the Game. And by the end of the course, she was able to come to terms with situations like her boyfriend pointing a gun at her and holding her money, and was really able to find healing through that process. So it was like, this is totally worth it as we were building relationships with the survivors. And then another survivor, she finished her certified nursing assistant program, which I remember we would pick her up like 6 a.m. in the mornings, make her lunches, and do everything that we could to make sure that she accomplished that. And it was a celebration. When she was finished, we went out to celebrate and had a good meal. So yeah, those early days, it was tough, but it was all worth it. It was all worth it.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great. And so since the early days, I mean, we're still in our early days, but not as
That's
early.
True.
We've grown a huge amount. The number of people we've served in our programs, our staff. We're up to 19 staff now. What would you maybe, Deborah, attribute that growth to? Like, why do you think we were able to grow so much in such a short period?
Oh, that's a great question with an easy answer. God. He's just brought such incredibly brave survivors to us. Wonderful volunteers, super generous church partners, and the most competent staff.
So many sustaining donors over the years that have really allowed us to grow so much. They've been a backbone of support for us.
Absolutely, yes.
And so with that, I mean, you've been tremendously important in supporting the landing in all the ways that you've given of your time and your resources, your talents. What's really your motivation in supporting the landing in that way? What would you say to others who might be considering if they want to support the landing?
It's just so rewarding. I can't imagine not being fully invested in the landing. And the same is true for James. Once you meet these individuals whose lives at some point got derailed by a sexual abuser or another circumstance that made them vulnerable, you can't help but have a heart to help them. We know that every dollar is so well spent and so well accounted for that it's very comfortable to donate. And when you see the results and the impact that it has on survivor lives, it's like God multiplied that money
100-fold. So our mission statement says that we're fueled by the love of Christ. So everything we do is fueled by God's power and His strength, and it's ultimately for His glory. Where have you seen God show up in the Landing?
First, I would like to say that God shows up every day at the Landing, in every space that we provide services. He's completely faithful, and so He's always present. And that was particularly evident with one survivor that was referred to us from another organization. She had been trafficked in Houston, but actually had previously lived in another state. We were fortunate enough to meet through the Landing, and she actually, as a youth, was a member of her church choir. And she sang one of the hymns for us that she remembered using an empty water bottle as a microphone. And it was just the most amazing moment that you knew God was there for her and that God's there for all of us. She was thankfully reunited with her family, and we're just so blessed to have been part of that.
Oh, that's awesome. Natasha, what about you? How have you seen God work, and what have you learned about Him in this?
Oh man, just like Deborah said, through each survivor who He entrusts to our care, and I remember there was one survivor who came in, and she just came for some food and rest. She didn't talk that much, but that night we were actually having outreach, and James and one of our staff members actually were out on outreach that night, and they saw her sitting on the curb, wrapped in a blanket, and she was just tired. And because we had already started building a relationship with her here at the drop-in center, she was able to tell them, I also want to go home. And so we were able to help her be reunited with her mom that night. So that was just like a big God moment that I remember. It was, all that happened in that same day. And He taught me a lot about holding things loosely, because we always have our own plans of how things have to work a certain way, and maybe they don't work that way. And He's going to direct us in a different way that's better.
Yeah.
And so hold things loosely on this mission. It's honestly, He brought a lot of great people into our community, but this mission is greater than any one person. And that's exciting.
It is.
That's exciting.
Well, so we're almost 5 years old now in our journey as an organization. What dreams and hopes do you have for where the Landing will go next?
It's really important to all of us that we stay in alignment with God's will.
Yeah.
And so we're just hopeful that He continues to reveal His will to us, and that we're obedient to it. We would especially love more opportunities to serve youth and children in our communities that have been victimized. And we trust that God will allow us that privilege.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that was an early dream of the Landing, and this has been a year where we were able to realize that and launch the youth advocacy program and start serving children and youth who've been trafficked.
Yes.
Providing quality services has always been really important to us, and so I just hope that we continue to do that well, and that I believe so much in this model that I hope that we can, share what we've learned with other drop-in centers around the country, so that more drop-in centers can open up. Because I truly believe, we are seeing so many people come through our doors that we can have an impact on, that we can build relationships with, and let it be in their timing that they go through their healing. And so that's what I hope to see, just for the future, is that just getting the word out there more about all the different ways that we serve through advocacy in the drop-in center and outreach, and so that so many more survivors around the country can be served well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Natasha and Deborah, thank you so much for your bold steps of faith in the early days and for sharing your stories with us today. And thank you to everyone who's joined us in this work. We wouldn't be able to fulfill the Landing's mission without this community coming around us and serving survivors so well. So if you feel moved to get involved, There are a couple ways you can do that. You can pray for survivors. You can serve by filling a need or volunteering. And then you can also give by either becoming a monthly donor as a justice warrior and joining us in that work, or giving on a one-time basis. So thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to having you join the Landing community.